All right. We are here for the, I believe, 5th episode of LeRoy Hansen doing some family history.
Yep.
We skipped a couple weeks. We've been really busy, but we're back at it. Okay, so next, I'll just keep going on. A year or so later, he formed a little company with Lou Dodds, and I went to work for Lynn. At that time, I was hanging wallpaper for him. Time went on, and about 6 or 8 years later, I decided I didn't want to work with Lynn. He was a wonderful guy to be fishing and hunting with, but if you started working for him, you had problems. And I think this was his dad that he was mentioning, or the Bauer Construction Company, and a wrecking yard. Does that all sound familiar?
Not a wrecking yard?
Yeah. Let me read, I guess, the paragraph before.
Yeah.
So the following year, probably 1931, that cousin Ray Hansen invited me to go to Scipio Range to deer hunt. I remember that. All my boys now go deer hunting, and it's a big deal. Now let's talk about where we were going to live. Bert and Bill were living at home with mother and dad. Bert had a job on the streetcars, and Bill had bought an automobile used parts department. Oh, he'd bought into. That is a wrecking yard. It was pretty well established. Wow, I'm having a tough day. I was pretty well established as a paper hanger through the city and had taken quite a few jobs. I was doing apartment houses. And he would do those. And then the whole apartment complex. I was thinking about 270 Coatesville. Lynn bought a home on Coatesville Avenue. I think it was about 270 Coatesville from Mr. Frank Bowers, who was a building contractor. A few months later, he was kind of getting behind his payments, and Mr. Bowers asked him what the problem was, and he said he didn't have any work. So Mr. Bowers said, I'll give you some work. You pay me half of the rent, and I'll give you half of it in cash until we catch up.
Yeah.
That started quite a union with Lynn and the Bowers Company. They became real good friends, and Lynn developed into a painting contractor and started right out. I did really well. So Lynn, I think, is his brother. And then he was saying next is that he worked with Lynn for a while, and then he decided that was too much.
Yeah.
This might be a good place to tell you about the wrestling Hansens. We boys always did like to swim and spent quite a bit of time at Municipal Springs. Where's that? Municipal Springs? And the boys liked to wrestle in the water. Bert, Floyd, and Bill went up to the Deseret Gym and started taking wrestling lessons from John Anderson. He was a good wrestling teacher. To make a long story short, Bill and Floyd became really well known as wrestlers. They turned professional and went into the wrestling world. Bill left Salt Lake, then traveled the whole world with wrestling teams, and finally ended up in Hayward, California, where he became well known. At one time, he was considered the 7th best heavyweight wrestler in the world. Bert was a really good amateur wrestler. He did better in the amateur world than either of the other two guys, but he didn't seem to fit into the pro as well as Bill or Floyd. So Deseret Gym. I wonder, did you find anything about Deseret Gym in Salt Lake?
I looked up Municipal Springs. I couldn't find anything, but Deseret Gym permanently closed. It looks like. Come on now. Deseret Gymnasium. Yeah, it's just somewhere in South Salt Lake. Looks like the building's still there.
Oh, really? That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, let me show you.
Oh, and then do you want to share the
Deseret Gym?
Go back to the street view.
This one?
Yeah. I don't know.
Not sure. Maybe it was like a long, long time ago, and it's not even there anymore.
Yeah. Well, do you want to share his the slideshow that of his wrestling record?
Yeah.
So, and I think that this was his uncle or his cousin. I can't remember if it was his, but Floyd.
WrestlingData.com, this one?
Yeah. So so that's his profile, and then the next one is his record. And I should have on that. I should click on Billy Hansen and see if it has anything interesting as well, because his brother also was really good, and he's on there.
That's cool. So he wrestled for like a lot of years.
Oh yeah.
Wow. I wrestled in high school. Maybe that some of the genetics I got him. I didn't do too great, but whatever.
Yeah. I'll Slack you this link. We could show this one. This is for Bill. People have given him a vote on how good he was.
Oh wow, okay.
But man, this guy had 1,200 matches, 500 and something wins, 340 draws, and 280 defeats. So basically, man,
Wow.
that's pretty good. So Billy Hansen. Well, I found in here that there was a little section about Floyd, which maybe there's also a section about Billy. I'll have to look for that. But we could read this little section quick about Floyd Hansen, who's this wrestler.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, okay. There's one about Bill Hansen. Okay, so Floyd. Life began for Floyd Hansen on December 30th, 1901 in Goshen. He was born at home, the second son of 6 boys born to Joseph and Mattie Hansen. Oh yeah, so that would be his uncle.
Oh yeah.
Is that his brother? I don't know. Anyway. They were sent to Gridley, California to establish a colony for the Mormon Church. They traveled in the company of Annie and Will Farr and their family. It was while the family was living at Clear Creek, Utah, that Floyd met his future wife, Nancy Eleanor Wild. Oh, this is his brother. So this is Grandpa's uncle. But his brother was one of the best. Wow.
Joseph is LeRoy's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, they had 6 boys. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it. Okay. So this guy is a lot closer to us than he's our great uncle.
Yeah.
He was 19 at the time and she was 18. They were engaged for a year and married on December 8th, 1920 at the Salt Lake City courthouse. They honeymooned for a week at Salt Lake. They went to Saltaire swimming. They went to swim in the Salt Lake for their honeymoon. How romantic. Their first home was at Mid Creek, later changed to Utah Coal Mine. The other place that they have lived in Salt Lake City and Bountiful. They have 2 children, Carl Floyd, born August 27, 1921, and Lola May, born in May 16, 1923. Floyd was a professional wrestler for many years. The Hansen boys, Bert, Floyd, and Bill, were swimming at Wasatch Springs in North Salt Lake. The lifeguard there was a a fight and wrestler promoter. He saw the boys wrestling in the water and suggested that they go to Deseret Gym and meet the wrestling coach. He was a world champion, the coach. The coach was a world champion, John Anderson. He was what started them and got it in their blood. The rest is history. They joined the wrestling team. Bill went on to be a professional wrestler who traveled abroad. Floyd wrestled professionally also for many years. Floyd later had a tavern in Bountiful that was called, appropriately enough, the Toehold. Floyd died in February 24th, 1965. So here's some pictures of Floyd. He's a strong wrestler.
Yeah.
Not him. He's a huge dude.
Yeah, he's ginormous. Wait, no, that's it looks like it says Floyd on the left, and then whoever else that is.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Primo Canera. I don't know who that is. Some famous guy, probably. Oh, man. He does look like a Hansen.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so his brother, Bill Hansen, was born in April 21st, 1909 in Gridley, California. So he was a little bit younger than LeRoy. He was the sixth and last son born to Joseph and Martha Maddie Hansen. Joe was 35 and Maddie was 33. Bill started school in Gridley. The family moved to Clear Creek, Utah in 1915 and then to Salt Lake City. Bill married Lillian C. Henderson on March 12, 1932. They moved to Oakland, California in 1947. There's got to be a lot of history in between that because, man, that's like the whole Great Depression and the World War II. They had three sons. Dick, born in February 19th, 1936. Bob was born in April 12th, 1942, and David on April 20th, 1951. Bill was a well-known wrestler. Bill died on April 14th, 1968, at the age of 59. He never saw us land on the moon.
Dang.
He missed it by like days.
Whoa.
I think. Didn't we? We landed on the moon, I think, in July 1968.
Yeah. 69. July 16th, yeah.
Shoot. Well, he missed it.
If we landed on the moon. I'm just kidding.
And so here's some pictures of him.
Wow.
Being a wrestler. And then I've seen this picture before at Grandma and Grandpa's, and I thought it was just like this big famous picture. And I was trying to tell someone, and I'd be like, you got to be able to Google it. Like a big man with a tire next to a little kid. Like, nope. Just I saw it as a kid growing up.
Wow.
Well,
That's
okay.
cool.
So those were his brothers. LeRoy's brothers were famous wrestlers.
Cool.
Okay.
And Lynn was another one of his brothers when he like hunted and did paper hanging or whatever they did together business wise.
Yeah, they did business together for a while, and then I guess then decided to only go fishing and hunting.
Cool. All right.
Okay. So that was like the 30s, man. All right. I guess we also have a lot more to talk about the 30s. Okay. Lynn's partnership with Lou Dodds in the painting business didn't last too long, just a couple or 3 years. It was about that time Lynn and Lo broke up and Bert left the streetcars and came to work with Lynn and me. From then on, Bert learned to hang paper very well and became a very efficient paper hanger. And when the vinyl wall covering came into being, he did really well at that. So his other brother got involved. Sounds like Lynn may have been difficult to get along with if he got divorced and I don't know. Had people stopped working with a lot of people. Okay. When my brother Faye came to Salt Lake and went to work on the streetcars, they started calling him Joe instead of Faye. His name was Joseph Faye, but everyone called him Joe, and the name Faye was more or so less dropped. And it wasn't very long until the whole family started calling him Joe. When he was working on the streetcars, we did a lot of duck hunting. I remember a little story that might be worth telling. One time, just before the duck season opened, he went to his boss and the streetcar barn. They called where they kept the cars a streetcar barn. Like, is it a taxi? Is that what a streetcar like runner means? I don't know.
I don't know.
Like, you kept your horses at the barn and now you keep your cars at the barn, so it makes sense, I guess, for that time.
Yeah.
So Joe went to his bosses at the streetcar barn and told him he wanted the day off tomorrow to go duck hunting. The boss told him, we don't give days off to go duck hunting. The only way you can get a day off is to be sick. And Joseph replied, I'll tell you one thing. If I don't go duck hunting tomorrow, I'm going to be real sick. So needless to say, we went duck hunting and Joe held his job just the same. After Joe had worked many years on the streetcars, he quit and went to work for Sears Roebuck's, selling at their farm store. So this Sears used to be pretty close to my house in Salt Lake, and it got torn down just in the last year or two.
Yeah.
He liked being a salesman. I might be bragging, but he also did especially well. He had a way about him that he could really sell. I remember he told me that the boss, who was the head man of downtown Salt Lake Sears, came in and told him. So that's the main guy, that whole building. I don't know if it was that big, but like at the time, but it was a big complex, like 2 blocks or something.
Yeah.
And now it's a pond. Like a gross pond. So the boss came in and said, you've done a good job. Joe answered him saying, yes. Are you happy? Joe answered him saying, yes. The boss said, you ought to be. You're making as much money as I am. Well, Joe, like Floyd, had a heart problem. And on December 20th, 1960, after a full days of work at Sears, Joe died in his sleep. This was the first death in our family. And I'll say here, it was mighty hard to accept.
So he used to be called Faye. This is Joe, one of his brothers, or who is this again?
I think this is one of his brothers, yeah.
Wow.
We need a map of all the people. Add like their name description to it, like Joe. Change his name from Faye.
Yeah, striked out. Okay, well, yeah, so that's a bummer. I wonder how old he was.
Well,
He passed away before his parents.
1960. Oh, yeah, wait. Oh, yeah, he must have. I don't know when he died or when he was born, but he died in 1960.
Wow.
So, yeah, maybe one day we should make a family map of all these people, and so it's easier to point out who's who.
Yeah. Yeah, LeRoy was born in 1907, so if it was his younger brother, then he was like 50 years old or so.
Yeah.
But it might have been his older brother. But yeah, he was like 50 or 60, so.
Yeah, he must have been. He wasn't retired. He was still working. All right. Well, we've got a good part of this story because there's one version of the story and then there must be another version of this story. So we're going to read the story that's written here, and then we're going to talk about what also may have been going, like some hints of other stuff that we've learned.
Yeah.
From talking to Grandpa. Grandpa told me some good stuff when I was over at their house the other day. All right. Well, I guess it's time to start talking about romance. Bert, Bill, and I would attend the public dances here in Salt Lake, namely the Bluebird and the Coconut Grove. The dances then were more or less a singles dance, and the girls were there to meet the boys, and the boys went to meet the girls. That was a little chiasm right there. Whatever the chiasms are called. Coconut Grove, man. I don't know what that is. And they really did. Meanwhile, Bill started going with the girl next door, Lillian Murray, and he finally married her. Chasing the girl next door, man.
Classic.
She joined him in his work and then on into the wrestling world and traveled with him from then on. They finally ended up in Hayward, California, where Bill died a year or so later. Lillian remarried and is living in Oregon. Bert had quite a different story. Because he both worked on the streetcars and went to the dances, he had the opportunity to meet about every girl in town. And I think he did. So Bert got around. All right. Then one little gal caught his eye at Gladys. Gladys. Isn't that still a bar?
Yeah.
What's that? I don't know how to pronounce that. Gladys?
Yeah, Gladys, yeah.
Gladys. I'm pretty sure that's a bar in Salt Lake.
Yeah, let me look.
They were married and bought themselves a nice little home. They were real happy from then on until Bert's death in November 1986. So Bert lived almost until I was born.
Wow.
Back to the dances that we were attending, each individual dance was numbered, like number 4 would be a foxtrot and number 12 would be a waltz, up to 16. And 16 was always good night, sweetheart. You would see a certain lady on the floor that you would like to waltz or foxtrot with. You'd catch her eye and tell her, let's remember number 12 and we'll dance. Sounds like a big production. And yeah. I don't really remember meeting B, but it must have been on one of these dances because I can remember that she and I always saved number 12 dances because we both like to waltz. These dances are very different than what they are today.
Yeah.
I found out that her name was Beatrice Farrer. She lived in Murray and taught the 3rd grade at Liberty School. Well, we did waltz around, and after several months, I asked her if she would let me take her home. And she said on several occasions, well, I came with my friend, and I don't believe that I'd better leave her. The next dance, she'd give me some other excuse, and the 3rd time, another excuse. Anyway, I pestered enough to ask her, and she said, well, yes, and finally agreed to go to a show. So I came home from work that day and got all dressed up, ready to go out with this beautiful girl, and then the phone rang. It was her brother saying that she wasn't feeling well and didn't want to go out that night. To say the least, I was disappointed. 2 or 3 days later, I got dressed up and went to this address, knocked on the door, and asked for her. She came to the door and I said, how are you feeling now? Would you like to go to a show? And she said, yes, if you'll give me a few minutes, I'll get ready. We went uptown to a show, and after the show, stopped on the way home and bought us a hamburger. We got along pretty well. That evening, she said, after saying goodnight, I asked her if she'd like to go again. She said, well, yes, I'd like to go again, and we made another date. I remember the 3rd time we went together, I picked her up and okay. I remember the 2nd or 3rd time we went together, when I picked her up, she asked me if I could take her to the library where she went quite often. So I took her to the Murray Library. It must have been wintertime because I remember how she was dressed. She wore a broadtail fur coat trimmed with brown squirrel, and she did look good.
Wow.
A broadtail fur coat trimmed with brown squirrel. She
What's a
left the
broadtail? Is that like a type of?
I don't know. Like I imagined it like having like a long tail of a coat.
I wonder if a broadtail is like a. I don't know if it's a type of animal or if it's a type of style or what.
Yeah, I don't know.
Might be a type of lamb. Broadtail. Lamb squirrel coat. Sexy as all get out.
Yep, lamb squirrel coat.
That's
Hey,
awesome.
Turner. Okay, so she left the car and went up the steps and came out of the library and back to the car. Boy, I'll tell you, she looked mighty nice to me. And she said, "LeRoy, that's what you've been waiting for." Oh, and I said, "LeRoy, that's what you've been waiting for." Oh, so he was like, "Wow, she's so cute." From that day until she had been my from that day until this, she has been my one and only girl. She got along with my family real well, and they accepted her and seemed to love her just as much as I did. Uh, And I'm sure her family accepted me. On Christmas 1934, I gave her a diamond ring. We decided to be married the following June. Now, I've had people tell me that I was a pretty good salesman, but how in the world I ever sold her that bill of goods, I'll never know, because our likes and dislikes were really far apart from what I thought was a really fun way to spend a Sunday afternoon was to take my shotgun and go down to the west side of the lake and chase jackrabbits and rattlesnakes. While I'm sure she would have much rather have gone uptown to a nice show or over to the park for a picnic lunch. So they had difference, but sounds like they were happy.
Yeah.
So when I was at Grandma and Grandpa's house, we were looking at pictures, and there was a picture of Grandpa LeRoy with someone, and it was labeled that it was his cousin Anna or something like that. I don't know what it was. And but Grandpa was like, maybe that's that other lady. And and so I was like, well, tell me more about this. And he's like, a couple years ago, we were on Family Search, and a new record popped up that was attached to LeRoy. And this new record that they'd never seen or knew anything about was a marriage certificate from some record in like record company, like record keeping for Utah. And LeRoy was married to another woman. I can't remember what her name was, but oh, I'll think of it. It was like Vivian Black or something like that. And so they but Grandpa had never heard of this. He had no idea that his dad was married a few years before he got married to his mom. He didn't and so
Yeah.
everyone in the whole family was just shocked to hear this.
Wow, that's so wild.
Um
Does no, okay. So I was trying to think of who's still alive that would like think that was so crazy. So grandma and grandpa, obviously, and then like there's grandma and grandpa probably still have cousins and stuff that are still alive and whatnot. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember if Grandpa has siblings that are still alive, but I think he does. Um, and one of his brothers recently passed away, and I don't know if it was before or after that they found this out. But yeah, some of them were surprising. The story is kind of lost to history. It would seem kind of reasonable that LeRoy was either maybe he felt ashamed or maybe he was embarrassed by the situation and didn't want to tell people.
yeah,
Or maybe back then it was just taboo to even talk about. Um, and but Grandpa said something that I thought was really interesting. He said, "We're not even sure that our mom knew about it, so potentially it was
yeah,
just kind of like this big old secret, or maybe she knew and just there was just decided to be something that they never told anybody."
yeah. That could be. That'd be wild if she never knew. But yeah, I could also see it where she knew and then just they decided that they didn't want to have to deal with any of the like shame. But the thing is, if he was married for, do we know how many years it was?
It was like 2 years or something. It wasn't very long.
Because like I'm sure his whole family knew and like cousins and stuff like it. Unless you get married under the radar for 2 years and just decide to make it secret, like you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I doubt it would be. I think it would be very hard to keep it a true secret. That sounds like I would be shocked if they were able to, I would be surprised if Beatrice, be grandma, our great grandma who I met and remember,
Yeah,
just knew about that. That would be really surprising.
yeah, yeah. That's wild.
Well, should we keep going for a little bit? Or
Sure. Yeah. Where are we at? Does it look like there's another, I don't know, page or something?
yeah, this next paragraph looks really interesting, and then maybe we could end there.
Okay. By the way, I looked up. Oh, what's that?
The next two paragraphs look pretty good.
Oh, cool. Okay. I looked up the Coconut Grove Dance Place in Salt Lake and the Bluebird Dance Hall or something, and it looks like it was renamed to the Terrace Ballroom, and just looks like a big old ballroom with a floor, and they probably danced and played a bunch of music. So I don't know, nothing too crazy, but I looked it up and yep,
They waltzed the night away.
yep, 12.
Well, we could you could drop a picture of that in the presentation, and we could look at it another time.
Okay, cool. Yep.
All right. Well, I think these next two paragraphs would be kind of a good wrap up for this section. We were in the middle of the Great Depression, and of course we needed a house to live. I found out that the home next to Mother and Dad at 170 Whitlock could be bought. So I got a hold of the owner and arranged to buy it. I paid him $1,200 for a house.
What?
$1,200 for a house in like 1934 or something. B was teaching school and making good money, $90 per month. And that was nice for probably okay. She got paid only during teaching time. So she didn't so during the summer she didn't make money. So $90 per month, and that was for 9 months, not a year. $90 a month to teach a bunch of rascal third graders. I was working hanging paper with Lynn and myself, probably making $6 or $7 a day when I worked, but I only worked 2 or 3 days a week. So we didn't have very much money. After the people moved out of this little house, I was going to move in and fix it up. So he probably had a tough time getting work then if he got paid $6 or $7 a day, but only works 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah,
it's kind of
like he's on par with like 6 or 7 times 10 is like $70. So if he worked, a third of the days in a month, and he made less than her, but she only made money during the school year.
So they probably had a monthly budget of or a monthly income of less than $200.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Inflation is wild. Like I could accidentally sneeze $200 and not even notice.
Yeah. I spent $200 on one meal one time. Yeah, it's like crazy.
Yeah, a fancy meal would be their whole monthly budget. Wow. Okay, so we didn't have very much money. After the people moved out of this little house, I was going to move in and fix it up. I went in with the wallpaper steamer and steamed off all of the old wallpaper in the whole house. In so doing, I found out that the place was lousy with bed bugs. There was nothing to do but call the fumigator. That's a funny word, fumigator. Looks like alligator, but A fuming gator. While the wallpaper was off the walls and laying on the floor, the man came in and fumigated the whole house. He must have done a pretty good job because we never did see a bed bug after that. Then, with the help of my friends and relatives, we moved in and painted and papered the whole house. We did it up pretty fancy too. At least I think it was fancy. We had the front room carpeted, and while I was doing the painting, B got busy making drapes and curtains for all of the windows. The drapes in the front room were hung on wooden poles with wooden rings so we could draw them back and forth and use as blinds as well as drapes.
That's cool.
I have a picture of this house because this is the one I went and drove by. That's it is.
It's in there.
Yeah, it's in there. It's slide 13.
13 coming up.
Yeah, that's the house that they later moved to. But yeah, right here, that's the house.
Wow. Let me slide this up. This is the ballroom.
Oh wow, that's pretty big.
It says this is some postcard. It said when I googled this, and it says largest ballroom in America. So interesting.
They the people of Salt Lake love to dance.
Yeah.
Do you know what the address was on that? Where is that? Oh, it says. Oh wait, no, never mind. 858. I wonder what that is.
Well, it was renamed to the Terrace. So the Terrace Ballroom was 464 Main Street, Salt Lake.
Oh yeah, that's also not very far from here.
By the Grand America. Yeah.
It's where the Grand America is now.
It's right up the street from it, right here. So there's the Grand America. And, you're not seeing this.
Yeah.
I'll just share my whole screen right now. So there's the Grand America and Little America, and then it says it was right here somewhere.
Oh, it's a parking lot right now. Wow. Right. Oh, right next to the DA. Oh yeah. Okay. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That is pretty wild.
So then they bought this for $1,200, and they had fleas, so they had to fumigate it.
Yeah, they had bed bugs.
Bed bugs. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Okay, this is great. So after we had the house finished up all fancy like this, we went over to Granite Furniture and bought a whole house full of furniture. Everything we needed for the front room and even a dining room set. We bought a coal stove for the kitchen and one for the front room. The cook stove in the kitchen was hooked up with what would be known as a water jacket. It was plumbed onto galvanized hot water tank over in the corner, so we could have hot water as long as we had a fire going in the kitchen stove. It worked out pretty well too. It did a pretty good job. When we bought the furniture at Granite Furniture, I remember we paid cash for it, and it was quite an accomplishment in those Depression days.
Wow.
Holy moly. So they must have been pretty good at saving money and being pretty frugal. So that's a lot of money probably to spend on all that stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. It looks like there's coils, the water coils right on the side of the stove, and will heat it.
Yeah, that makes sense. As long as you had a fire going. So they had an active fire in their house. That sounds so unimaginable compared to, the way I live today.
Yeah. Yeah. Even when I went to Colombia recently, they had a fire in the place the whole time. Yeah, it never went out the whole time I was there for 10 days.
And did they cook on it, or what did they use the fire for?
It was kind of a spiritual thing, but it was in this. It was partly heat because it was a little chilly up there, and yeah, it was kind of just keep the fire going type. I don't know, just tradition almost even.
Wow. Okay, one last paragraph because this is pretty good. This is
Okay.
like this is oh man. Okay, there's maybe the next two paragraphs and then we're at the end of a page.
Okay.
On Saturday, June 15th, 1935, B and I were married in this home. Now there weren't too many guests in attendance, just our immediate family and friends. And they were few in number, but those who were there were very precious to us, and we hoped we'll always remember them. We bought groceries just before the wedding to keep us going while we started out housekeeping. The very next morning, we got up and went right into the routine of married life. We didn't have any kind of wedding trip or honeymoon because I had to be back on the job Monday morning, hanging paper and working around town. So they didn't have a honeymoon. They just got married.
Wow.
Along come August, I decided we ought to go fishing. Maybe I thought it would be a honeymoon. B and I decided to go to Fish Lake, which I really want to go to. The eclipse is going right over it. And Zach, the CNC cutting guy, he's going there.
Cool.
And Pando is there.
Yeah.
So we packed up everything, and while we were packing, Bert came around and said he'd like to go too. So that was our honeymoon. Then Bert was on it with us. So Bert, their brother, went on their honeymoon.
Bert, get out of the way.
We had a real fun trip down there. I think B enjoyed it as well as the rest of us because she was the champion fisherwoman. Fisherman is what it said, but I wanted to pick it. She caught all by herself a 16-pound Mackinaw trout. I think that's
cool.
Mackinaw trout. It was 3 feet long. She was real proud of that accomplishment, and I was proud of her. The first few months of married life were real good to us. We got along just beautifully. If we had any problems at all, they were just small financial problems and we could easily cope. But with those because we just loved each other dearly. Aw.
Nice.
Well, that sounds great. Good stopping point for today.
Yeah. How many kids do they have? I know we're gonna get to that, but how many kids do they have together total? Grandpa's.
I don't know. Well, let's see if I can find a good picture.
I can't remember how many siblings Grandpa has.
I'm not sure.
Guess we'll find out. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. If you want to find out, you got to subscribe and like, comment for more.
Yep.
So I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Okay. All right. Well, that was good.
Been great. How do I stop the? Oh, great. Okay.